Wow. Let's just give me a second. Let me process that. Let me process that.
Today I will be showing you guys how I make my L1 burger candle. I'll start by taking some dye and some wax and mixing it in with some brown dye. Adding some heat and giving a few swirls. For the next step, now that your wax and dye is mixed, you want to go ahead and add it to your mold. In this case, I had another candle in process, so I just added the mixture to both molds. This is a step where you also want to add in your fragrance. Unfortunately for this particular candle at this moment was just a display candle for me to figure out the mold, so I did not add fragrance, which I ended up selling the display candle with fragrance later on. Now that you have poured your mix into your patty, you want to just barely let it sit for about a good 10 to 15 minutes and let it harden up. I say this because this is easier for you to pick up. For me, this was my first time making this mold and it did have a lot of detail. So in order for me to know where everything was or to pick it up to see where everything was, I had to let the patty form first. Once your patty forms, this is what it will look like. I'm going to pick it up to show you guys exactly what I mean and how the patty came out. Now that I'm sure that our patty is done drying, this is what it looked like. Looks really nice, really detailed, and really real. Now that I know that my patty looks nice and it is correct and it has molded, this is the perfect time to take a time, and you will see me fairly take the time out to look at my mold. This will be the best time to do that, as if all of the molds are very detailed and you want to be able to check and do a last thorough count, because as farther you get into your mold, you will not be able to pick it up. Now that I am sure of my other pieces of my mold and I know where everything's at, I'm just going to go ahead and repeat that wax and dye process. In your case, you will need to add the fragrance, but again, I didn't add fragrance as again this was just a display candle for me. I did go ahead and add in my coloring for my pickles, my tomato, and my lettuce off screen. What you want to do is get some wax and mix your colors and your fragrance and then pour it and wait for it to sit. I did save this clip for the most difficult part of the mold, which will be the sesame seeds and the buns. So I'm just going to run through that process and show you guys how I did that. For this part of the candle, I wanted to get my bun looking as realistic as I can, so I just took some clear wax and dropped it down into the small sesame seed part of the bun. And then for the buns, I wanted them to look as brown as I could get to a realistic burger. So what I had to do was I had to mix yellow, red, and blue together to get a gold colored wax. A key to mixing your wax is always to remember that your wax is white. And when adding the color to white, it will fairly show up lighter. If you want it to be darker, you will have to add more product. More product, the darker. The less product, the lighter. During this step, you will want to fairly use a fair amount of yellow as your base. I am using a heat gun during this step because I am fairly using powder dye, which is different from liquid dye. If you were using liquid dye, you would not have to use a heat gun. You would just keep stirring until you have the consistency of wax and dye that you wish to have. Now for our next color, you will not need a lot of red. You only need 1 scoop of red. You do not want it to overpower your yellow, as that will cause a different color and it will cause bleeding in your candle. Once you have your 1 scoop of red, you want to add just a half a spoon of blue, or maybe to about a full spoon of blue. Not more than what you added for your red, and not more than you added for your yellow. Once you mix those colors, you want to keep stirring. Once you have your blue and your red and your yellow mixed together, you want to go in and add a fair amount of yellow again until it turns to this brown color. Once you have brown, you want to keep stirring and keep stirring until you get to a goldish brown. After a few stirs, if your mix is still looking fairly brown, you want to go ahead and add more yellow. And you want to keep stirring until you get a golden brown. Once your mixture is mixed, you want to go ahead and start pouring in your mixture. You want to be careful not to pour it inside of the other molds, and you want to be careful not to move the other molds. Now that we are done filling up all the pieces to our mold, we are now going to let this sit for a good 30 minutes and wait for each mold to set. Once our mold is set, this is the wicker tool that I will be using to stick through each piece of our burger to set our burger when setting our wick. And there you have it, guys. That is our Rome burger. I do have a nice clip after this clip showing you guys each piece of our Rome burger as I put it together. I did decide not to go ahead and continue the pickles as they were very fragile and very difficult, but I will show you guys how I put the patty together and the final look of the patty. So here's the final look of all the pieces of our Rome burger. I'm so excited how it came out. As you can see, the pickles did not come out to my best favor, but everything else looks very, very, very good.
Hey, aren't we? One Krabby Patty, extra onion.
One Crying Johnny coming up. First bun, then patty, followed by ketchup, mustard, pickles, extra onions, lettuce, cheese, tomatoes, and bun. In that order. One Crying Johnny. Up.
Whatever.
Get it, you crustaceous cheapskate. I can't make a double Krabby Patty with the work. I can't put a patty on a bun with lettuce, cheese, onions, tomatoes, ketchup, mustard, pickles, and top bun together in that order.
It's tight.
And there you guys have it, our El Rome burger candle. Shout out to El Rome Dog for this custom candle and this experience. It has been a truly amazing and wonderful experience making this candle. Shout out to El Rome Dog. Guys, go subscribe to El Rome Dog.